On to the important part of this event, which is the keynote speech. So we have here with us Dr. Sven Gierse, Vice President from SAP Germany, to deliver the keynote speech. A few lines about Dr. Sven Gierse. Can we have you on stage, please? So Dr. Sven heads the user assistance team in technology and innovations area at SAP. He finished his PhD in polar marine ecology before he decided to start his digital transformation. At SAP, he held various positions as product manager for portal software, product owner for analytics and integration content, and knowledge manager for SAP NetWeaver technology platform. So, since 2010, he's leading user assistance teams for SAP's technology portfolio, including SAP HANA and SAP Cloud Platform. His specializations include search, metadata concepts, and lean management. Over to you, Dr. Sven.
Thank you, Geeta, for this nice introduction, and welcome to all of you. It's really an honor to got invited to that meeting, and I'm also excited to see so many faces on a Saturday morning. So perhaps before I should start my presentation, a little bit about what SAP Cloud Platform is all about, that you can also put the examples I'm going to show into a little bit of perspective. SAP Cloud Platform is our cloud-based technology platform, meaning it's a runtime environment for our cloud-based products. It's also the design time, meaning the development environment for building and extending SAP software. So that means you rather see a little bit of more technical content, although SAP is probably most known for business applications. So I titled my presentation, User Assistance, Where Are You Going? I mean, the first counter question can be, so why are we supposed to move? How should we do it? What should we do? Perhaps even when should we do it? Well, don't expect me to answer that question for you. I want to give some examples what SAP is about to do some of those questions. I mean, you're probably all in IT business, so therefore you may get inspired by some of the examples I'm showing, and then pick the ones that also fit to you. But I know every business, every company is different, so therefore you have to find your own way and give own answers to those questions. But let's address the why first. And I'd like to start with a quote, a famous one, that Prime Minister Trudeau on the right-hand side made at the last year's economic summit in Davos. Not when he met Prime Minister Modi, but at a different occasion he said, well, the pace of change was never as fast as today, and yet it will never be as slow as today as well. So that means there's all change around us, and that does not apply to the products we deliver, but it also applies to the environment we are living in. It especially applies to the people who use our products, our software, and who finally consume the user assistance, the technical communication, the technical writing we deliver. There's another quote that inspired me, that is probably not one of my favorites, but especially the SAP people may know that person. It's Hasso Plattner, it's one of the co-founders of SAP. And 2 years ago at a major customer event from SAP, he said the following: nobody reads documentation. I mean, it should be a shock for all of us. I mean, that's what we are doing on a day-to-day basis, and now somebody who is fairly important and who is a good influencer says something like this. I mean, of course, it's literally, I mean, if you can't take it literally, it's wrong. I mean, if we look at our consumption data, we are pretty proud when we're looking at those figures, and we also get a lot of positive feedback. So therefore, I mean, we're quite delighted, and we know that our customers appreciate what we deliver. So I think what he rather meant is that nobody wants to read documentation. And I think there he would be right. I mean, it's also what I feel. I mean, I don't want to read documentation, especially not prior to using software. I just want to get some hands-on experience. Also, I mean, if it comes to consumer products, I don't want to read something in advance. I also feel distracted if I have something to read while I'm using the product, if it's only delivered next to it. Still, I remember the times when we delivered huge guides, perhaps thousands of pages that even got printed out, but I do believe those times are over. Let me also second that my assumption that he rather meant nobody wants to read documentation with a little figure. I mean, when we surveyed customers and asked them, how do you feel you deliver your experience to customers? And this is not about the capabilities of products, the features. It's the overall experience, meaning the purchasing experience, support experience, but of course also comprises the product capabilities, and finally the stuff that we do in technical communication. So 80% believe they're delivering a great experience. They're just satisfied with what they do for their customers. Now let's look at the other side. So only 8%, and I mean, this is the next shock, I think, would agree to those companies. And this is what we call the experience gap. So although the entities that deliver products feel confident, customers think differently. So what can we do about it? I think we need to tackle two challenges. One is the long tail challenge, which means if we look at the entire portfolio we deliver, there are a few topics, few deliverables that are consumed fairly well. We reach the masses. It's very attractive. People like what we're doing. And then there's the so-called long tail. That doesn't mean that this content is bad, but it only reaches a minority and probably even none of our users. It's not, again, because it's bad or it's irrelevant. Sometimes it's because the content isn't found. Sometimes it's because it only targets a very special user group. And to make a bigger impact, to close this experience gap that I just showed, we can do several things. I mean, on the one hand side, we can decide to get rid of some of the long tail content and then say, hey, and this is something also at SAP we experimented with by saying, well, let's wait before we start writing documentation until the customers really requests it. And I mean, we didn't do it widely, but so far I can also tell you, I mean, sometimes it pays off. Sometimes, I mean, you do have the additional effort just later. But you can also level up the attractiveness, be it the access in the sense of improved findability, but also, I mean, well, findability is probably the most important stuff, but also overall change the way you provide the content so people enjoy your deliverables just much more. The other one goes, The other one goes along with what I've already said. I mean, the environment around us is changing. It means we cannot live with this one size fits all. I said it earlier, we used to deliver huge guides targeting all different roles, all different kinds of tasks that people should do with our software. And this does not longer fit. Let me just get a little water. So I think being target group specific was probably the first change that also all of you already applied. But there are different intents, there are different situations. I mean, the same user can be in a learning situation, can be in a troubleshooting situation. I mean, they start evaluating a software, then they start prototyping, they may get productive, and later on they want to do more sophisticated things. So this has to be tackled. And it cannot be tackled with the same kind of deliverables in the same document. So what do we do at SAP? I mean, usually what we do is, I mean, we have product-centric pages where you find all kinds of deliverables, be it a video, documentation, tutorials. But I think what customers also expect from our side is to be a little bit more situation-focused. And this is why we delivered this on this multi-channel strategy. That means for onboarding situation, for troubleshooting situation, for learning situation, we gather all of our content across the entire product portfolio so people can go there and find their way for their specific situation. I mean, we also use external channels like YouTube and Twitter to announce what we are doing, because this is where our users are and this is where they want to get the information. Now let me get to the point, like, how can you improve the content itself? How you can make it more attractive, what I said, to level up this long tail problem. One aspect is become interactive. What means interactive? It says, be by my side, involve me. Let me show you some example of what we are doing. First and foremost, I think we need to deliver our product documentation directly, or our user assistance directly within the product. What we do, and you see it here on the right-hand side, it's our so-called guided tours. That means we do provide our documentation, our user assistance within the product, but not in a side panel. but directly at the UI elements where you actually need to have this assistant. You get guided in a way that you can read something, how you should do something, and then you interact with the software by clicking somewhere, and then it auto progresses, and you get to the next step. This does not only work in a single component or product context, but it would even work across products. And this is important. I mean, usually we are assigned to a single component. We write our information just for that purpose, but customers are using our software differently. They want to understand how the end-to-end process works. And this is where those guided tours help a lot. If we go to the other side, we also have it for static content, not for an end-to-end flow, but sometimes, for instance, you come to a decision point. I mean, you have radio buttons that ask you whether you want to go for option A, B, or C. You have to select something, and then you need guidance. What is the impact of that decision? And also there, I mean, you want to have this assistance, this help directly at those radio buttons so you can take your decision. Last at the bottom, the example is our onboarding center. What we provide there is not only information on how scenarios work and how you actually get used to the software. Onboarding also means that you have to do project management, that you have to do announcements to your users within the customer company. And we provide email templates and project management templates that you can edit to your needs, so you can reuse content we deliver for your own purposes. We also deliver tutorials. Tutorials are already, of course, step-by-step procedures. But within those tutorials, we do offer quizzes to just assess whether they comprehend our knowledge. And we also offer validation steps where you can actually enter code to see whether what you have just learned and what you have executed properly works within our software. So this is the kind of interaction that puts the user into control and does not let him leave the software, go somewhere else, search for content, but do it directly within our products. Also, some examples for interactivity is our API, so-called API Hub, where we deliver documentation next to a sandbox system, so you can try out your API, you can call them, you see the results, whether they work as expected, and if not, you can refine your calls by reading the documentation. You can copy it into the sandbox system, but also later on into your development environment, so you can work with the examples we provide. In the middle, our UR5 content is something we publish on GitHub. Not to have yet another output channel, but rather to collaborate with users, because there people can contribute to what we have already delivered. They can discuss the content. Sometimes they even request new features through this channel, taking the documentation as a basis. And while discussing those new features, we already get the raw information, the raw input to deliver the next version of that documentation. So a very powerful tool for us. Last not least, something I'm particularly proud of. If you look at this map that you see, it's a, typical table that you probably all have in your documentation, but it's also interactive. It's what you're used from Excel. You can easily filter that table. The filtering does not only customize that table to your needs, it also changes the graphic that you see above. And it also works vice versa. You can also click on some of those bubbles to see which service is available in which location, so then the table gets filtered. We created that topic just to serve our customers to exactly find out what services are available in what location. And after some time, it turned out that this is actually something that our salespeople enjoy a lot. It helps them in their conversation to have a good customer discussion. I even got a call one time from one of our board members who used it in a customer situation where he actually found out that something is missing, or he felt it was inconsistent. That, of course, made us proud, because we say, hey, this is something that is well adapted. And finally, this got the most read topic of all of our documentation, again, for the cloud platform. Even for all of SAP, this is, I think, among the top 50 topics that is used at all. Good. So interactivity is important. Next one is become conversational. I mean, first thing that comes into somebody's mind is, okay, this is all about chatbots. It's not completely true. Yes, it is about chatbots, but the thing is, we need to engage customers in a conversation. It's not like, if we deliver user assistants next to our products, it means that customers need to find the relevant content themselves. But what we usually do if we have a conversation, a dialogue, we try to narrow down the problem. We want to understand what is the intent of your opposite person. And this is what we also need to do with user assistants. So the examples I have here is, of course, on the right-hand side, we experiment with chatbots. But chatbots, the tools improve, but also the expectation on those chatbots are fairly high. They should be multilingual. They should really speak my language. They need to understand all of my terminology, and we can phrase a problem in very many ways. So therefore, it's always a challenge to adapt a chatbot to the particular process, a particular problem. But we are on our way. The good news is it does not only have to be a chatbot. First of all, to do one step back, being conversational also really means that you speak the language of your users in a way that you are not too formal. You should be optimistic. You should be insightful with what you provide. So therefore, we also need to adapt the way we really write our content. And if you don't have the measures to create your own chatbot, I think you can also in a static way, and this is what we do. We have a tool that we call Guided Answer, which support the root cause analysis for troubleshooting, for incident handling, which means that we ask those questions more or less in a static way. So where's your problem? Then we also recommend things to find out how you can actually narrow down your issue, like have you tested this? What kind of response did you get from the system? Not by error messages, but as you can see here in this example, please follow those steps and then tell me the result of what you have just done. And then we have predefined answers because we know what is the potential result of that assessment. And then we go to the next question and further on until hopefully we have resolved the issue. Perhaps sometimes by sending them again to one detailed topic within our huge documentation set that they can then execute and get it resolved, or they finally get sent to our support people where they finally again get into a conversation with a real person. So enforcing this conversational style is important. Now get me to the last thing, which is, wrong direction, which is a little bit more futuristic, which is become predictive. And I think there's a huge potential. And if I forward the slides, you will already see there's no single example. And it's not because it's so confidential that I'm not allowed to share it with you, but it's rather that we are also just at the beginning and we are experimenting with that. So what does it mean, be predictive? Let me first ask a question. Who knows Microsoft Clippy? Nobody? You're probably all too young. Microsoft Clippy was something, I don't know whether they introduced it in Word 98, but it was a little paper clip that always, you know it, that always popped up and suggested something like, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And it popped up every, second. And that was an issue. And I think it was an issue because at that time, machine learning, artificial intelligence wasn't where it is today. Becoming predictive now really means that you join forces with data mining people, that you use product telemetry. Of course, it's dependent on whether you work in the cloud and whether you have access to usage data. But if you work with this product telemetry and you analyze what, first of all, an individual is doing, but also what other people that have the same role are doing, you can provide assistance before they even know that they need or want or can benefit from assistance. To give you some example, what also some other companies do is they analyze the usage of their software, and they found out that after a certain period of time, let's say you work with this product for 3 months, they usually explore a new set of products or components. One really concrete example would be, you start working with Excel, and once you're familiar how to fill cells with formulas, after some time you start using pivot tables. And you can analyze when this will exactly happen. And then a little bit in advance, you provide this guidance like, hey, do you want to investigate that area? We found out that you do this. And it's also this typical Amazon recommendation like, hey, users who did that typically also do that. Meaning, for instance, to give you another example, I mean, you did a single transaction 10 times in a row, so why not suggesting that we also offer mass operation and then show them how you can accomplish that? Or you work in a transactional interface and show them, hey, we also have analytics capabilities that probably make you a little bit more efficient. It is important, getting back also to the conversational thing, that you do not teach people. Nobody really wants to be taught, especially not by software, but you just offer assistance and that they're free to use it or they can also get rid of it. So that's quite important. Good. So hopefully you got a feeling in which ways user assistance should evolve. I don't know whether you have recognized, I haven't talked at all about videos yet. Well, videos for me, to be honest, is just a different format of delivering the content that we provide. Unfortunately, they have some disadvantages. I mean, they have advantages, to start with that one. As said, people are different. That also means that some people prefer written information, others prefer to consume content with videos. But the disadvantages are they get outdated fairly often because the capacity you need to invest into videos is quite huge. And this is also, I can share this with you openly, feedback that we receive. Unfortunately, videos get outdated too soon, although they expect that they get updated frequently. And they also expect them to be delivered in as many languages as the written documentation. But there are some good use cases for videos. One is what's new content, because it's clear once you have delivered what was new in that release, every user expects that that video will certainly get outdated and it will not get updated, but we rather create a new video, and that's all fine. We archive the old stuff. Good. There's another video, another kind of video that we use, and I will show you an example in a minute. And for that, I like to refer to what I've said earlier with the quote of Hasso Plattner, who said, nobody reads documentation. I mean, actually, a little bit later, he also said, we create it only for legal reason, which is also not very pleasant to us, although there are industry like pharmacy or food that do a lot of and require a lot of legally binding documentation. But for software, I mean, hey, you don't want to be pushed into that area. So that means also, if you remember that I said, hey, we can actually contribute to closing this experience gap. Sometimes we need to prove to development, to our senior management, how do we really contribute also to reach our business goals? I mean, we are all sure about it. I gave you just some examples, what we do, what's the impact of those things. Well, we need to somehow translate it to senior management. And if you're in cloud business, I mean, you typically have 3 simple goals, which is, first, you need to attract new users for your software. Then you need to onboard those users so that they can use it quickly and efficiently. And last but not least, you need to retain those users so that you have a constant revenue stream. At least for us, those are explicit goals coming from our top management. And with the video I'm going to show you in a second, you will see, while also seeing some of the examples I've just presented in a little bit more action, how we actually contribute to those goals in user assistance. So can we please have this video now? Good. So, thanks a lot for your attention. I hope, as said, you could get inspired by some of the examples I've showed, and well, I would be excited to hear from you whether there's something that is applicable also in your environment. So now I'm happy to take some questions if there are any. We have this famous and fancy, where is it?
Catch box.
The catch box, which means it's the Microsoft that we can throw at you, and then you just have to speak into this black circle. And yeah, now I'm open to take your questions.
Hi, Sven. That was a nice keynote speech. Thank you.
Thanks.
I have a question. Now, I also don't feel good about the fact that he said nobody reads documentation, but I think in today's world, it is nobody reads, period. Whether it's documentation or any other kind of stuff, no one wants to read. I think the new generation is more visual. So how do you think we can address the visual part of it? Like you said, even I don't believe that videos are the way to go. And a chatbot can be very irritating sometimes. I think that's what the Clippy did. It would pop up with it looks like you're writing a letter. Can I help you? And these are the suggestions and all of that, right? So how can we ensure that the chatbot doesn't go the Clippy way?
Well, first of all, I'd like to disagree with what you have said, that we should move away from written information or that people do not like PDF. It's true what you say. I mean, the younger generation, I mean, expect to be everything available in the web, HTML-based. But there's still a lot of people who prefer PDF. Whether it is for printing reason, whether it is because everything is in one document and you can more easily search within. It also has to do with the quality of search engines that we use, whether we can connect to Google or if our own search engines are better. No, I mean, I think we need to deliver on those different expectations. And therefore I said, I mean, we have multi-channel, single sourcing that, I mean, the same content can be most of the time easily delivered in various ways. That is important. Getting to the second part of your question, I mean, how can we ensure that the chatbots don't well, move into this Clippy way of doing things? Well, first of all, we learn from that experience. That's very clear, and that's also why I say we do not do those chatbots easily just because there's a little bit of technology available and you can easily configure this. And actually, SAP has a machine learning well, branch in our company where actually every author is able to configure such a chatbot, but that's not all. I mean, it requires a lot of research. What are the possible user intents? What do they really want to do with their software? In which environment do you want to offer a chatbot? There's also not one chatbot fits all purposes. You have to have a network of chatbots, one for troubleshooting cases, one for learning in the situation, one for what's new, just one for explaining the capabilities of the product. So there are various chatbots that need to be trained on a very specific well, intent and task. But then also, I mean, because the machine learning and artificial intelligence capabilities increase, the risk already gets lowered because those chatbots learn autonomously. Clippy had to be pre-configured. I mean, we as technical writers had to pre-think everything, which is nearly impossible. Machine learning will help there a lot. But still, I mean, just the different way a question can be phrased for the same thing is very difficult. I mean, I can give you one number. Typically, you have to submit 50 ways to phrase a certain request to the chatbot so that the chatbot is then able to also anticipate the, I don't know, 200, 1,000 ways that you can theoretically use to phrase a question. And that's the challenge. So it's even today more cumbersome to create a good chatbot than creating a video, even if the scope of that chatbot is fairly small. So it needs further development. It's not all available today. And the expectation on chatbots, and this is the high risk, is fairly high. I mean, and therefore we also move to the other example I'd show with guided answers. If you do this in a more static way, the expectations are lower. That doesn't mean that the support we provide is bad or of better or of worse quality. No, the opposite is true, because just because the perception of a chatbot is like, it understands me well, I can really engage with the chatbot, I can ask my questions any way, but which is not yet true. So therefore, I rather warn, and before you launch a chatbot too early, you should just experiment a little while and use it rather internally or as a beta, and this was also shown in my example. It was a beta chatbot and not a productive chatbot. So yeah, I think hopefully this answers your question. Just throw it.
Hi, Sven. Thank you for that interesting note. My question is, you showed many different technologies, conversational, interactive, and predictive. So if you really look at the future of documentation, do you think that this traditional form of documentation in terms of PDF and HTML guides coexists with these new technologies, where the new technology becoming the lead-in help to the traditional form of documentation? Is that the scenario of what's going to happen? Or do you think that the new technologies will take over and our current form of documentation may become redundant and extinct?
No. I mean, to take, again, an ancient example, I don't know whether you know the song, "Video Kills the Radio Star," which is not true. I mean, we still have radio, we have television, now we have streaming, still we have standard television. So, I mean, certain things will remain to coexist. Will one thing become more important than the other? I totally think so. So, I mean, the stuff that we provide, the HTML-based documentation that we provide on, well, help portals, support portals, will become of less importance opposed to what we deliver directly with the software. Yet, it is typically the same content. It's just a different output channel. Sometimes we also need to adapt the way we write our text. We need to become shorter, as said. We need to become more conversational, more user-centric in our language. But there are use cases where people prefer, as said, also to read a more comprehensive PDF, because, I mean, there are sometimes architects that need to understand a certain topic and they want to read certain things as a book and they don't want to flip through single HTML pages. They just want to also understand the overall flow, how you have structured things. But this is then dedicated for a specific target group, while, again, the majority of users want to prefer a different format. But I think this is the way it develops. So I hope I got your question, but yeah, I think overall it will be tinier things, more specific on a very single step of a task. Sometimes you combine those steps to a bigger tutorial. Sometimes that even grows across products when you really describe an end-to-end process. But the best is, again, if you do it in the software, in those little tiny bits, and then you progress from step to step to step, instead of having everything just in a single structure and read through it prior to using it or while you were working with the software. I think this is the big difference. Become more interactive, become more embedded with your product.
Thank you.
No, yep.
Hi Sven, that's an interesting speech. And one point that I have got interest is prediction. It's a part of data analysis, we do predictive analysis, right? So what kind of parameters should a writer think from his perspective to predict the users, what they're expecting from you?
I think the key thing is the intent. I mean, what is the purpose of your documentation? And that means you need to tag your documentation. I mean, of course, I hope that, again, machine learning, artificial intelligence evolves in a way that it can really deduce the intent of your content by just analyzing the content that you have written. Today, I think you have to tag your content with metadata. But I mean, the intent has to be very specific. I mean, you have to be clear about it. I mean, you should always be, if you start writing something, what is your target group? What is the situation? What does the user want to accomplish? Do they want to learn something? Are they in a stressful troubleshooting situation? If you know the intent, and of course, if you limit it to a very small scope, this is the key for doing proper analysis and then also proper prediction. Of course, it also requires that, well, many people using the same things. It will not work for things that are just targeted to some specialist, like a security specialist. I mean, if you only have 5 people, you cannot deduce any patterns from their behavior. But it best works where probably end users use something, or a similar kind of users. If you have a development tool, it works perfectly with all developers who are using something. But I do not think that we have to do a lot beyond what we are already doing, except for the time being, we need to do more tagging so that we get a little bit more context that you cannot automatically derive from the actual body content.
Yeah, thanks.
But plus, I mean, let me also say this, I mean, it requires a strong collaboration with, well, analytics experts, and I mean, you also need to have the telemetry capabilities, so it requires a lot of support from development that may not think yet that the data should be later also used to improve your user assistance information. They probably only use it to see, okay, this is the feature that is used, so we continue, well, evolving that feature, and here's a less used feature, so therefore let's probably retire that feature. This is how they, I mean, most of the time use telemetry today to also monitor performance, but we need it for a different purpose, and therefore we also need to team up with development and with data analysts to actually get to that point. And I think this is the most difficult part. We can do our part, but we are not alone. It's not achievable without those other roles. Good. So if there are no further questions, I'm also, of course, available during the event. Don't hesitate to approach me, and then I'm looking forward to have a good discussion on some of those topics. Thank you.
Thank you.